A man only begins to rot the moment he apologizes for wanting order. You weren't destroyed by her anger. You weren't destroyed by her leaving. You were destroyed the day you started accepting disrespect as love and chaos as a necessary part of connection. Confucius didn't warn you about monsters. He warned you about masks. Those worn by beautiful women who turn your silence into their throne. And still you kept quiet, not because you were noble, but because you were scared. You thought patience was strength, that compromise was compassion. But Confucius said, to see what is right and not do it is want of courage. What you called love, he would have called cowardice. Because love, true love, doesn't make a man small. It doesn't ask him to hide. It doesn't force him to tiptoe in the kingdom he built. There is a woman every man should fear, and she does not shout her intentions. She smiles. She compliments. She plays the role until your guard is down, and then slowly, methodically, she begins to untie the threads of your strength. Not all at once. No, she's smarter than that. First she questions your tone, then your timing, then your very character. And you, trained by a culture that says masculinity is dangerous unless subdued, you start explaining. You start apologizing for instincts you were born with, for boundaries you should have never compromised. You smile through her insults. You walk on eggshells in your own castle, and one day you realize you're exhausted not from war, but from surrender. Confucius didn't speak in modern language, but if he did, he'd say this: the woman who cannot be corrected is the woman who will correct you into oblivion. She doesn't want harmony, she wants dominance. She doesn't want peace, she wants power without responsibility. And the most terrifying part? She's celebrated for it. The modern world calls her independent, empowered, a queen. But she isn't building anything. She isn't guiding. She's ruling with mood swings and emotional threats. And every time you flinch, every time you yield, you teach her that she is the god of your world. You tell yourself you're just being supportive, that letting her speak her truth makes you progressive. But there is no virtue in letting someone burn your house down while praising the fire. You weren't made to be her emotional sponge. You were made to lead. And leadership isn't about control, it's about courage. The courage to say, no, I will not tolerate this, even if it costs you her affection. Because her affection, built on fear of consequence, is not love. It's a leash. Confucius said, the gentleman understands what is moral. The small man understands what is profitable. But today men understand neither. They pursue women not with standards but with desperation. They look for attention, not alignment. They chase the most beautiful disaster they can find and call the resulting collapse a love story. But it's not love. It's unprocessed trauma wrapped in perfume. It's lust mistaken for loyalty. It's chaos with lipstick and a calendar. And the man who falls for it isn't evil. He's just untrained. He was never taught that a woman without discipline is a danger, not just to herself, but to every man who tries to love her. Because love requires order. It requires self-restraint. It requires a mutual commitment to something greater than feelings. But she doesn't believe in that. She believes love is a feeling, and feelings are facts. So when she feels disrespected, you must apologize, even if you said nothing wrong. When she feels unloved, you must perform, even if you've done everything right. And when you finally draw a line, she calls you controlling, toxic, outdated. The woman every man should fear is not the one who cheats. It's the one who needs no reason to feel above criticism. She does not seek clarity, she seeks control. And her favorite weapon isn't rage, it's confusion. She will twist your words until you doubt your own sanity. She will rewrite history, then blame you for not remembering it correctly. She will break your rhythm, then call you emotionally distant, and when you're drained, depleted, spiritually bankrupt, she'll say you've changed. Confucius warned us in plain terms. He said, "Virtue is not left to stand alone. He who practices it will have neighbors." Translation: real virtue attracts those who are also virtuous. A woman who has discipline, who honors boundaries, who respects masculine leadership, she will be drawn to the man who walks with quiet strength, but the woman who fears order will reject him. Not because he is wrong, but because he reminds her of everything she refuses to become. She doesn't want a man, she wants a mirror that reflects her as perfect. And the moment you show her otherwise, she either leaves or makes your life a punishment for her staying. And yet men stay, not out of love, but out of guilt. They tell themselves, "She's been through a lot," or "Maybe I'm not meeting her needs." But brother, needs do not justify abuse. Past trauma is not a license to create future chaos. You are not her therapist. You are not her redemption arc. You are a man, and you are worthy of peace, not perfection, but peace. And peace is impossible with a woman who treats boundaries as insults and accountability as violence. What makes her dangerous isn't her beauty, it's how her beauty blinds you to her disorder. You ignore red flags because you see potential. You romanticize dysfunction because you fear starting over. You let things slide. You let her yell. You let her disrespect your time, your values, your voice. And every time you do, you reinforce the belief that your love is weakness, that your patience is permission, that your loyalty is surrender. Confucius said, "He who does not investigate the foundation will have trouble with the structure." Look at your relationship. What is it built on? Chemistry? Excitement? Sexual tension? Those are sparks, not stones. They light fires, but they do not hold weight. And when the pressure comes, when life demands maturity, discipline, sacrifice, she won't be there building with you. She'll be blaming you for her boredom, for her insecurity, for the emptiness that's always been inside her but now has your name on it. The woman every man should fear is not the one who challenges him, it's the one who punishes him for being himself. She demands openness but punishes vulnerability. She wants leadership, but only if she can veto your decisions. She calls your clarity stubbornness, your protection control, your structure rigidity, and because you've never been taught what healthy femininity looks like, you begin to believe her. You begin to think maybe love is supposed to hurt this much. No, it's not. Love is work, but it's not war. Love is effort, but it's not chaos. And you, my brother, were not born to survive her. You were born to build something so rooted, so noble, that no storm could shake it. But to do that, you must first unlearn the lie that peace is selfish, that boundaries are cruel, that walking away is weakness. Confucius said, "The superior man is modest in speech, but exceeds in action." So stop explaining, start walking. Let your presence, not your pleadings, remind her what kind of man she's dealing with. She doesn't fear confrontation, she thrives in it. She doesn't fear arguments, she collects them like trophies. What she fears, what shakes her spirit, is a man who no longer plays the game. A man who doesn't yell, doesn't explain, doesn't chase. A man who simply steps back, builds in silence, and refuses to make room for chaos in a life shaped by discipline. That's the man she cannot control. That's the man she secretly respects. And that's the man you must become if you wish to live free. There's a silence more powerful than shouting, a withdrawal more cutting than argument, and a man who has learned to walk away without anger, without bitterness, without turning back. He terrifies her. Because he cannot be baited, he cannot be guilted, He cannot be made to feel responsible for a woman who refuses to take responsibility for herself. That's when the mask slips. That's when the truth bleeds through the makeup. Because if she can't provoke you, she can't feed. If she can't confuse you, she can't rule. And without your reactions, your explanations, your desperate love, she is left alone with the one thing she's been running from all along: herself. Confucius understood this long before the modern world wrapped dysfunction in self-help language. He knew that order isn't cruel, it's compassionate. That discipline isn't oppression, it's structure. And that the man who allows chaos into his world under the name of love isn't virtuous, he's a fool. The superior man is firm in the right way, and not merely firm. He didn't say be rigid, he said be right, be principled, be unwavering in the face of manipulation. Because your soul knows the truth, even when your heart is confused by her tears. And that's her final tactic: tears. Not the tears of sorrow, but the tears of strategy. Because when logic fails, and charm fades, and shame no longer works, she cries. Not always loudly, sometimes with just enough tremble in her voice to make you question your strength, to make you wonder, am I being too hard, too distant, too cold? But cold is not the absence of care. Sometimes cold is clarity. Sometimes cold is exactly what a man must become when warmth has only rewarded him with wounds. You're not a monster for leaving. You're not cruel for detaching. You're not heartless for saying enough. In fact, it is the heart that compels a man to finally protect himself. Because love without self-respect isn't love. It's servitude. And you weren't born for chains. You weren't born to explain your worth. You weren't born to beg a woman to see your value while she uses your guilt as her throne. She will say you abandoned her, that you gave up, that you weren't strong enough to handle a real woman. But brother, real women do not ask to be handled. They do not make their presence a burden and call it passion. They do not tear down a man and call it honesty. Real women do not fear masculine structure. They crave it, because they know that a man anchored in principle is the only man capable of loving deeply without losing himself. But to attract such a woman, you must first become such a man. And that begins not with charm, not with strategy, not with games, but with a ruthless examination of your own weakness. You tolerated her madness because something in you was afraid of being alone. You explained yourself 100 times because something in you still believed love must be earned through suffering. But that's not love, that's programming. Conditioning. You've been taught that a man's value lies in how much he can endure, how silent he can remain, how much disrespect he can tolerate in the name of keeping the peace. Confucius would laugh. Peace built on self-denial isn't peace, it's decay, and decay always ends in collapse. Look around. The men who try to love these women without structure, without boundaries, without self-respect, they're shadows now, broken, bitter, addicted, lost. They speak of women as enemies because they never learned to be men in the face of one. And you're next. Unless you change, unless you rise. So how do you spot her? The woman every man should fear doesn't always look dangerous. She might be quiet, soft-spoken, educated, but her habits are chaotic, her routines are erratic, her moods rule the household, her past is a battlefield. And yet, she's always the hero. Her exes? All narcissists. Her failures? Never her fault. Her virtues? Always louder than her results. And if you dare to question this story, if you dare to hold up a mirror instead of a pedestal, she turns. Cold, sarcastic, dismissive. Then the gaslighting begins. You're too sensitive, you're imagining things, you're insecure. And when that fails, the threats come. She'll leave. She'll find someone strong enough. She'll make you pay, and the weak man fold. But you are not that man anymore. You see her now. You see the way she rewrites reality to protect her ego. You see the way she tests boundaries not to learn, but to dominate. You see how her love depends on your compliance, and instead of chasing, you pause, you breathe, you reflect, and then you make the move she never expected. You stop needing her. Because once you stop needing her, she loses all leverage. That's when her rage becomes obvious. That's when her manipulations lose their charm. And that's when you begin to reclaim what you were always meant to protect. Your kingdom. Not just your career or your money, but your peace, your purpose, your vision. You begin building again, this time not around her, but around your values, around your mission, around your future. And maybe she leaves. Good, let her go. Because better a lonely house than a kingdom ruled by chaos. Better silence than a voice that cuts you daily. Better solitude than a bed shared with someone who sees your strength as a threat and your love as a resource to exploit. You were not made for emotional slavery. You were made to lead, to serve with strength, to love with clarity, to build with conviction. Confucius didn't give us survival tips. He gave us principles. Timeless truths, not to make life easier, but to make it honorable. And one of those truths is this: if you want peace, prepare for war, not with the world but with yourself. The war against your own weakness, your own desperation, your own hunger for validation that keeps you returning to the very woman who feeds on your suffering. Win that war, and no woman, no matter how beautiful, how clever, how seductive, can ever control you again. You want freedom? Then respect yourself so deeply that you no longer feel compelled to explain your standards. You want strength? Then learn to disappoint those who demand your silence. You want peace? Then stop negotiating with chaos just because it comes in a pretty face. Because if you don't, the price you'll pay will not just be emotional, it will be spiritual. You will lose your sense of self, your fire, your edge, and eventually your will to lead. The woman every man should fear is the one who cannot love without conquest, who cannot admire without diminishing, who cannot coexist without control. She exists in every generation. She's praised by those who mistake noise for confidence and rebellion for strength. But you don't have to fall for it. Not anymore. You are not who you were. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are what you choose to become next. And if you choose wisely, if you choose to rise, to build, to walk away when respect is absent, then no woman, not even the most dangerous, can destroy you. Because she only has power when you give it. And you've given enough. Now, take it back.